तेरे करने दाता
Salam. It's a Sagittarius full moon. We're energized. We're here. We're happy, or we're sleepy. Seems to be a mixed bag around here. So we have the. Well, let's start with this. We're operating still within the Taurus lunar cycle, because anytime there's a new moon, it sets a cycle in place, and we operate within that lunar cycle through the next full moon and until the following new moon. So we have the Taurus lunar cycle, and it's that. It's the Taurian element. It's the element of finding peace and tranquility and solitude as necessary, gathering the real things in the world that you need to operate in a comfortable space, and to just bring yourself enough peace to do all of that. Now, at the same time, that lunar cycle, I'm just playing with this stuff because I'm fucking Virgo. Anyway, there's a lot of Taurus things. We have, from that Taurus lunar cycle, we had Venus, Sun, Moon, Uranus, Jupiter, all in Taurus. So it's a lot of Taurus energy, a lot of ground, a lot of earth, a lot of understanding of internal and external values, what needs to happen to have everything properly in its place to be in the world. So the lunar cycle, characterized by Taurus, brings us much more into the internal space of that. Now, we've already left Taurus season. The sun moved into Gemini a few days ago, and then we get this I didn't write the time down again. We get the Sagittarius full moon, which is, we had the building of energy through that Taurus lunar cycle, and we're now in the waning part of that. I believe the exact time of the Sagittarius full moon was around 6:55-ish. I might be a minute or two off this morning. And so now we have this new phase. We have this full phase. When the moon hits the full phase, it's at the full extent. So if we're thinking about it in terms of, say, something that manifests itself, the narrative structure of it is, the seed of it is born into existence. It grows and flourishes and breaks ground as we hit the first quarter moon. And as that thing, whatever it is, breaks ground, we bring it more into the realm of visibility. It's tangible, it becomes real. And then as it reaches the full phase, it reaches the pinnacle of its growth. And it flowers, we'll say. It flowers. It blooms, and it sets the stage for another seed to be born from it, but it still takes time. And that waning of energy is kind of like a diversion of all of the energy that's been built into the new seed that will be formed at the new lunar cycle. So now we have this waning period, and it's a period of release. It's a period of retooling and allowing for things to be shed away. Now, this is a particularly potent one for that, and I'm going to tell you why. But first, we have the Sagittarius moon at approximately 6:55 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. First couple of degrees of Sagittarius, because it's directly opposite the sun in Gemini, at the same degree of Gemini. And we get this challenge, this challenge between that which is purely movemental and informational, and we'll say nope, I lost track of the thought. So we have the Gemini energy, the pure movement of information. It is not biased or affected by any kind of external. There's just the desire to move information and energy, and so the Gemini energy is that. We're in a space of feeding the mind and feeding the nervous system and feeding our attentional structure. And we have the sun in the moon in Sagittarius. The common thread between these two signs is, it's information, and thinking about that word very appropriately. Information, that which puts you into greater form in the world. So information in its pure form, in its pure, like, this is interesting and curious, and I will gather it for the sake of having it, versus the Sagittarian element, which is, now what do I do with that information? What can I apply this information to in the world? How do I take the knowledge of the fact that this map says this is here and apply that to my life? So you go there. That's a very like Gemini Sagittarius archetype. The information exists as a point on a map for Gemini, and it only exists as a place one has been for Sagittarius. So, or a place one is going, but ultimately the experience that is gained from going to the point of origin for that information and figuring out what it is for, why it exists, how it affects things in the world. That is the Sagittarian call. Now, the other common thread between these two is the infinite need for open-mindedness. Gemini, when it closes its mind, becomes a box. It's a tiny little prison within your own mind. When the mind is closed, it's literally prison. But Gemini needs that ability to move outside of the predetermined structure of idea, of thought, of perspective. Gemini seeks perspective always. The way that I think about Gemini, the two sides of Gemini, the whatever two-faced nonsense, the two sides of Gemini are, one, the nucleus, that which is, and there's a philosophical depth to that if you decide to take it there, but just there's something at the center, and then there's something else moving around it in random fashion, that electron that's just whipping around the nucleus of an atom somewhere, and it's every place it is around the nucleus is somewhere that it has never been. And that is, take the core of the individual, the Gemini, the core of the individual, and you move around it in random fashion, looking back at the core from different perspectives. That is the Gemini experience. That is where Gemini gains its own perspective, but it's a constant changing of perspective, so do not fault them. The Gemini energy is that. It's the constant need to find new perspective. When the mind is closed, Gemini suffers. Whether it's a person or your own Gemini instances within your chart, within your personality, the mind must remain open. Sagittarius, similarly, it can experience something and stop at that. It's like, I've now experienced this. This is all. Probably the most potent archetype of the limited Sagittarius is dogmatism within religion. It's like, I have found this which I know to be true, and therefore it is all that is true, and nothing else shall change that or shift that or mess with that. And there's a certain necessity to that. The human being needs a kind of bedrock of true and unshakable. We need that psychologically to exist. There has to be something that is sure and predictable and confirmable, and that will hold up all of the other things. Now, the trouble is that dogmatism. It's like, it's not just an understanding of truth. Dogmatism is an understanding and an unwavering attachment to it. Because truth has an interesting way of shifting over time. Whether it be, now, the deeper you go, the less likely it is to shift. So, like religious concepts, religions leave out the whatever your dogmatic views about how bad religions are, and open your mind a little bit to the fact that religion comes from a necessary source. It's the source of that which is the bedrock of humanity. It's like, we need this to be there. We don't need the religion that is established and is called a certain thing to be there. We need the religious domain to exist, because without that, we cannot build anything else. It's human nature. That's why religions just naturally popped up everywhere. So, dang it, I lost my thought again. So, Sagittarius is that tendency, if left to stultify, is that tendency to become dogmatic. And so the challenge with both Gemini and Sagittarius is to open the pores, open the thoughts, open the causeways of the neural networks, so that new information can flow. And an experience is an experience, and it can feed into other things, but it can also it can also be revelatory in other ways. It reveals different possibilities of experience, and different experiences change what one experience actually meant. And without allowing for that dynamism within Gemini and Sagittarius, we lose so much of the potency of these signs. Now, also connected to this very potent full moon, most potently, Pluto. Welcome the not so gentle, not so giant, but definitely massive impact of Pluto. Pluto is that which, one, requires truth. It requires absolute brutal honesty. And if anybody's going to deliver that, it's Gemini and Sagittarius, because there's no filter between what is true and what is projected in its most positive light. We're just assuming everything is as positive as possible. Gemini and Sagittarius project nothing but truth. And there may be subjective elements to that, because perspectives have been formed by certain experiences, whatever. The fact of the matter is, everything that comes out of the mouth of a Gemini or a Sagittarius, you can trust it, because in that moment, that is the absolute honesty of them. Now, again, this is in the most positive form. There are realms of deceit and other things that exist, but ultimately, like, I've never met a Sagittarius that had a reason to lie. Like, they don't care enough in that way. They don't care enough about what you think of what they're saying, because they think that what they're saying is the absolute necessity, and they're not wrong. So we get Gemini and Sagittarius, and this dichotomy between the two. And it's a release cycle, because it's the full phase. And Pluto, coming into the mix, brings in this extra revelatory potency, because Pluto doesn't just want what's true in this moment and what's relevant now. It wants to go absolutely to the bottom of the gory details of what is actually real. There's a kind of there's a need to pull everything apart into its atomized pieces to understand each atom of the structure of the thing, so that it knows the whole truth about it, the different layers and the different overlapping understandings and the different truths about everything. And without that seeking of truth, there is no Plutonian force. So Pluto is that thing that reveals all of the comfortable, uncomfortable, and otherwise unattainable truths. So that is in, thankfully, harmony with this cycle. It's granted, Pluto's heavy either way. It just means that the energy shifts more easily versus if it was in disharmony, the energy would still shift. It would just be more abrupt or more chaotic or more painfully revelatory. When those things come up in your mind that you hadn't thought about in so long, and then they like re-traumatize you, that's a challenging aspect from Pluto. Versus when that thing comes up and you're like, oh, well, that sucked and I didn't deal with it. Maybe I could now. That's harmony. That's harmony from Pluto. So we get harmony from Pluto in this release cycle of the dogmatisms and closed-mindedness of the things that we've developed as previous experiences have affected us. We have an opportunity within all of that to really powerfully release some of those perspectives that don't fit anymore. And because we're in the Taurus lunar cycle, how do we apply that to the material world? This is a fantastic moment. Like the things that hold us back from prosperity, that hold us back from material comfort and peace and human love and affection, because those are also very Taurus things. The sensual world, that which we sense and that which we gain pleasure from, whether it be, well, not whether it be, regardless of what kind of wealth you want, there are things within you that withhold certain levels of attainment for that pleasure, for that wealth. And so ultimately it's just a perspective that holds you back in most cases. Obviously there are objective things in the world that slow the process or that hold certain pieces of information that you haven't found yet. But the perspectives are the things that hold us back most powerfully. So this is a good time to find those perspectives. And we all know what they are. All you have to do is ask. Like it's a Sagittarius full moon. Just harness your inner Sagittarian. Like you don't care what you think as long as what you think is true. That's not a good way of saying it. You know what I mean? It's like ask your Sagittarian potency, your potential within you, whether you think you have something Sagittarius in your chart or not. It exists in your chart and affects something in your life. So ask yourself, what perspectives do I hold that keep me from greater wealth, basically, and any kind of wealth? Again, what perspectives do I hold that keep me from greater wealth? And just ask yourself that. And you don't even necessarily have to sit there and wait for an answer. You can just like let the question rattle around in your subconscious until later in the day when you're like, oh shit, this is one of those things. These are one of those like repeated thoughts that I've held inside my mind for the last 3 decades. And I don't need it because it's bullshit. So anyway, we get that opportunity. Also affecting this in a much smaller way, but in a relevant way, we get Mars in. It's what's called a minor aspect with this lunar element. It's affecting the sun in a kind of agitated way, and Sun in Gemini is very busy and fast-paced, and Mars in Aries is also not slowing down for anyone. And it's in this mild conflictual geometry. It's not anything huge, but because it's a full moon, it's amplified. So there's, on one hand, the potential for conflictual agitation. I'm not saying it's going to turn into an all-out war by any means, but conflictual agitation, a bit of contrariness or aggressive insistence that correct is what you are. Allow for that to feed the process if it's necessary, or recognize that maybe it's one of those things that is a perspective that holds you back. Maybe you're just letting that boil to the surface as an automatic notion, because we all have them. Now, that's the full moon and its most effective attributes. Also important with the lunar phases is what sign the moon is in. The moon is in Sagittarius. This is another part of why the wealth thing comes in. It adds an extra an extra amplifier. The ruler of Sagittarius, where the moon is Jupiter. So we get Jupiter in the mix, which is it's fantastic. It's the grand benefic of the solar system. It is that which rules attainment and attunement. Those are probably the two best words for it. Attunement being the thing that gains you a better understanding of the world, and attainment which gains you more from the world. Yeah, it's the thing that grows. It's the ruler of wisdom and understanding and exploration and any kind of expansion. All of those things fit in the realm of expansion because you're expanding your wealth, your mind, your the expression of your genome, because every place that we go expands how much of our genome has been expressed, because everywhere we go and every new thing we do expresses new parts of the genetic information that we have. We're literally, every time we do something new, we are physiologically going into our ancestry to think, what do I have that fits this? And we pluck that out and we activate that genetic information, and we thereby become more informed. We become more into formation. It's fantastic. And we're fascinating creatures, by the way. So Jupiter, that which wishes us to expand and explore and become more, and Venus, the ruler of the lunar cycle, also relevant. Because Venus rules Taurus, and again, we're in the Taurus lunar cycle. So we have Venus and Jupiter, the two relevant rulers for this particular moment. And we also have, I didn't look at Mercury, which rules where the sun is at, but more important is the ruler of the moon in this particular case. So we have the ruler of the moon, which is Jupiter, and we have the ruler of the lunar cycle, the Taurus lunar cycle, which is Venus. They've come together in Taurus. Fantastic. Every time Jupiter and Venus come together, which is roughly once per year, it is the meeting of the two, we'll say for the sake of simplicity, the two most positive influences within the zodiacal structure. Venus ruling love and affection and wealth and value and pleasure and these things that we love to experience as humans in the three-dimensional realm. Jupiter, the ruler of expansion and wisdom and knowledge and exploration. So we get these two together, and it's all of the things that not the things that make life meaningful, but the things that we experience as a result of leading a meaningful life. Because if we're not leading a meaningful life, then none of the things that Venus brings you are actually good. They're just pleasurable in the moment, but not like rich in that. And the Jupiter element is like you could overeat. If it's your favorite food and you eat too much, you're still not going to feel good. So it has to be applied and accessed in a meaningful and intentional way. So anyway, when leading a meaningful existence, Venus and Jupiter come together, and they just amplify everything. The whole cycle of Venus and Jupiter is a cycle of, again, attainment and attunement, but through the Venusian realm, as Venus moves around the chart, approaching Jupiter in it's 13 months, it's roughly 13 months, approaches its next conjunction. We move through a cycle of experiencing the three-dimensional world through our sensory experience, through our sensory I lost the word. I didn't lose the thought this time. I lost the word. In any case, through the five senses, we experience the world, and that feeds the whole journey of building on this Jupiterian expansion and exploration throughout our lifetime. So when these two come together, it's a good thing. Long story short, it's fucking great. It's awesome. This is a good feeling. And when they come together in Taurus, where Venus is in one of its homes, is in its natural place, it's so like, it's juicy, it's sumptuous, it's sensual, it's fantastic for all things. And it is the expansion of what we value. It's an expanded experience of what we value in several layered iterations. And so that's that part. It's also connected to Neptune in Pisces in its natural home. Neptune in Pisces is comfy there. So like the realm of spirituality has been just steadily growing over the last 13 years or however long it's been since Neptune moved into Pisces. It's just a wonderful feeling. So Neptune is the third of this like positive trio, because Neptune, it's a bit ambiguous. It might be positive, it might be not. But in its current state, we're going to assume positivity. Neptune in Pisces brings a kind of dreaminess. It is the quintessential rose-colored glasses, which can be deceiving to your own self, but it can also be the thing that like makes life worth doing things. Because like if it doesn't feel good and seem like it's panning out in a positive manner now, do we keep doing it? Maybe not. But it helps to have that kind of glimmer about things, the magic that is Pisces and Neptune, the kind of the mystical semi-transparent veil that kind of overlays everything. That's Neptune in Pisces. So that adds a positive element to this. It might add a bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? I didn't even lose the word this time. I'm just not finding it. It's a gentle delusion. It's a gentle delusion. It's just that infinitely positive outlook that brings all of this together. And so, you might like be a little cautious in your zeal as you move toward things. It's also a full moon, so you want to kind of allow things to fall away. Don't let the deceitful and pleasurable nature of Neptune and Venus and Jupiter make you hold on to things that are trying to fall away just because like they might have felt good once, but now they're just a habit or a momentary respite from things, whatever the case. Anyway, that's pretty much that. Oh, right. So the Pluto element, I forgot to mention. I was going to simplify it. Let's just wrap it up with a simplification. Simplification of all of this. We have the opportunity to shed old, unserviceful, antithetical, counterproductive, super destructive, and otherwise perspectives. We can remove those from us and break ourselves out of a kind of dogmatic singularity of thought. We want to be able to be malleable in our perspectives as we move forward, because if we don't, then, well, we move forward, and when that thing becomes a little more clear and we realize that it's not precisely what we wanted, but we're in a dogmatic like transfixion, we're not able to break away from it to adjust our aim, which is appropriate for Jupiter and Sagittarius, aim the archer, and also the derivation in several languages of the nature of sin, to miss the mark. So we have these things changing our perspective, allowing us to release old perspectives, and maybe the Mars influence gives us a little extra gunpowder to get through that change of perspectives. Pluto allowing for us to dig a little deeper and be a little brighter in our vision of those, we'll call them toxic perspectives, because they're toxic in one way, shape, or form, and allowing us to you can see down to the roots. Instead of just seeing the surface perspective where like, oh, I could change the thought of this, you can see down to where that perspective came from and see if more of the nature of things needs to shift within you to come to a better place. We have that. Changing of perspectives, the deepness, the depth of the ability to see what needs to change, and also the added loveliness, the veil of, it's all happy and it's all lucky, and it might actually be a really positive experience. And you might look back later and be like, wow, that was actually a difficult thing to do. But for the moment, it's going to feel like it's smooth sailing. You fly off into the ethers, or, glide through life on the notion of naked on a sheepskin in a field just came to mind. It's like the Taurian element. And somebody else told me once that it was kind of like the nature of the seven, which rules Venus, or Venus is attributed to the number seven. This is kind of a tangent, but it's relevant. So the naked on a sheepskin in the field, there are no worries. There's no reason to be in a kind of place of stuckness, because you have everything. It's like you're comfortable. The sun is shining. There's a comfortable place to lay back. There's a breeze rolling through that just smells like sweet spring flowers, and that's that. It's a very comfortable place to be. So it feels like that as you float over the choppy waters of whatever change in perspective you have to deal with over the next couple of weeks. And that's that. That's Sagittarius full moon. I think if I go any further, I'm just going to ramble. So God bless you all. Have a good time. It's going to be a ride. Satnam.